Every day, we rise, challenging ourselves to work for what we believe in. At U.S. Border Patrol, protecting our borders is more than a job. It's a calling. Agents answer the call, working together to keep our country and communities safe. If you're ready for a new mission, join U.S. Border Patrol and go beyond. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.
This podcast contains adult themes and language, and some of the things that we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. In this podcast, we discuss sexual assault, torture, race, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself.
Well, let's get into the early life of Kendrell Lavar Lyles. Wait a minute.
What you got, Minnie?
Well, we could find nothing. Nothing. We found nothing. We found nothing about Lyle's early life or really anything about him, except that he worked for a while as a dishwasher at the University of Texas at Dallas. That's all we know.
That's
all we know.
Yeah.
So let's get into the timeline, shall we? Splish splash.
Go.
So 22-year-old Muhlaysia Booker, a trans woman who lived in Dallas, was a fierce advocate against trans violence. She's been described by her friends and family as a nurturer who took care of her community and loved to make people laugh. She was energetic and loved and a great friend and mother to her quote-unquote children, and making sure they were fed and had a safe place to sleep. And they, quote, stayed looking gorgeous, unquote.
That's so sweet.
It is so sweet. Just a quick thing about welcome to Culture Corner with Wendy and Beth. In the LGBTQ plus community, there are chosen families, which I'm not sure is a term everybody understands. People who find each other and accept and love each other with shared experiences. And in that unit, that family unit, individuals may take on roles like father, mother, or sister, not necessarily based on like biology or legal stuff, but rather the bonds of love and support.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes LGBTQ plus youth are rejected from their
biological
family of origin. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so chosen families are really important for the survival of the
absolutely.
The community.
Yeah. A month before her murder on April 12, 2019, Muhlaysia made national news when a video showing her being beaten by several men as a crowd of onlookers laughed and cheered on her attackers went viral.
That first attack happened after Muhlaysia was involved in a minor fender bender in her South Dallas apartment complex, bumping into another car as she was backing out to leave. The other driver blocked Muhlaysia's car. Oh my God, that's terrifying. Holding her at gunpoint and refusing to let her leave until she gave him money to pay for the damage to his car. Yikes.
Yeah, that is terrifying. As the two argued, a crowd gathered and someone pulled out a cell phone and began recording the confrontation. Nobody called police. Nobody called ambulance. Someone allegedly offered a 29-year-old man named Edward Thomas $200 to beat up Muhlaysia. I vaguely remember the video. I'm trying not to watch. I remember the video.
It was horrible. Harmed. Yeah.
But her attackers were black men, weren't they?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, we talked about toxic masculinity at the top of the episode. And that is an issue within, you know, the black community as well. But Thomas offered to beat up Muhlaysia, and the crowd closed in around, laughing and jeering and shouting transphobic and homophobic slurs as Thomas assaulted this young woman.
Oh my God. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So awful. Then other men joined in, punching and kicking and stomping Muhlaysia as she lay huddled on the ground. By the time several women stepped in to stop the attack, and it took women to step in to stop the attack and help Muhlaysia to safety, she had suffered a concussion, fractured wrists, and numerous other injuries.
It's so upsetting. I just, I hate these kinds of things. It's, I don't understand the I guess the fear that I guess it takes anger is a
It's a
these kinds
secondary
of aggressive
emotion.
acts are
think
based
it's
in
fear.
Right. So they're
I think-
afraid.
yeah,
So, but I don't understand what they're afraid of, because it's like
What
no
they
one's
don't-
making
Right.
you be any different. Why?
Right.
It's just
What-
frustrating to me.
There's an activist that I follow on Instagram. His name is Alok, and it's ALOK, a transgender nonconforming person. But follow Alok on Instagram. Anyway, Alok does all of these speaking engagements, and Alok's perspective is that it is a fear of what might be in them. Like the toxic masculinity suppressed those emotions of caring, etc., and nurturing, and that they're afraid of just being in the vicinity of that. I think
So
it makes
weird.
them
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
bad. And again,
It's
if
really
we're-
hard
if
to
not- if-
understand if you don't, I don't get it. I'm not a toxic.
I don't get it
toxic
either.
man.
I don't get
So
it
I don't
either.
get it. Yeah.
I don't get it either.
Yeah.
So
Someone uploaded this video to social media, and it quickly gained national attention and put a spotlight on the epidemic of violence against the transgender community, especially trans women of color.
Thomas was arrested and charged with aggravated assault. During his trial, Thomas's lawyer, Andrew Wilkerson, repeatedly misgendered and dead-named Muhlaysia in an effort to make the altercation seem like mutual combat between two men. Fuck out of
Wow.
here. He argued that Muhlaysia was at fault, and he downplayed her injuries as scratches.
Oh
Wow.
my God.
What
Yeah.
a piece of basura.
For
Put
sure.
that guy through the same thing and ask him if he thinks it scratches now.
Yeah. No
Yeah,
shit.
seriously.
Yeah. Thomas eventually pleaded guilty to a reduced misdemeanor charge. He was sentenced to 300 days in jail, including time served.
That's it?
That's it.
That's it.
Oh my God.
The weeks of her life after the assault were difficult for Muhlaysia, and she became withdrawn. But speaking at a rally after the beating, Muhlaysia told supporters, quote, "This time I can stand before you, whereas in other scenarios, we are at a memorial," unquote.
That's sad to hear that part with what happens
Mhm.
after.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp.
What's the first thing you'd do if you had an extra hour a day? Spend more time with your kids, go to the gym, work on a hobby, take a nap?
Can you do all those things in 60 minutes? Just kidding. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time.
Yeah.
But what we do with that time, we don't always know. But the best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what it is. And therapy can help you figure that out. Find what matters to you most and make it a priority so that you can find the time to do more of it.
Yeah. Therapy isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. It's for everyone.
Mhm.
It can empower you to be the best version of yourself. And I've been in and out of therapy most of my life.
Same.
And it has had such a positive influence on my life that I honestly do not know who I would be without therapy. And I don't want to know.
I don't want to know either. Listen, Beth and I have both used BetterHelp.
Yeah.
And we love it. And if you are thinking of starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule.
Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. You can also switch therapists at any time for no additional charge.
Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/fruit today to get 10% off your first month.
That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/fruit.
Every day, we rise, challenging ourselves to work for what we believe in. At U.S. Border Patrol, protecting our borders is more than a job. It's a calling. Agents answer the call, working together to keep our country and communities safe. If you're ready for a new mission, join U.S. Border Patrol and go beyond. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.
On Saturday, May 18th, 2019, at about 6:40 a.m., the body of a Black woman was found laying face down in the 7200 block of Valley Glen Drive At about 3 p.m. the following day, police issued a statement identifying that woman as Muhlaysia Booker.
Muhlaysia was the fourth transgender woman, all of them black, to be murdered in 2019. But unlike the earlier murders, her murder immediately garnered national headlines because Muhlaysia had already been the focus of national headlines.
Suspicion immediately focused on Thomas, but he had an airtight alibi and was quickly ruled out as a suspect in her murder.
Funeral services for Muhlaysia Booker were held Tuesday, May 28th at Cathedral of Hope in Dallas, which is said to have the biggest LGBTQ congregation in the world. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
The funeral drew an overflow crowd that included local and state elected officials. Oh, because it was election season. So they didn't really care. You know, around election season, the politicians, I can't tell you how many politicians I've met at church because they just show up at black churches during election season.
Right.
Anyway, at least one local news station broadcast the services live from the church.
Several speakers at the memorial service focused on the challenges Muhlaysia faced as a transgender woman and the challenges faced by others in the LGBTQ community. Pastor Stephanie Martin said, quote, "She was a young woman whose life was cut short by hatred," unquote.
Her mother, Stephanie Houston, said the April attack on Muhlaysia wasn't the first. Quote, "Muhlaysia had many fights. Muhlaysia didn't start trouble, but she would finish it. She just always had to defend, unquote. Standing at the altar next to a blue coffin adorned with flowers, Stephanie said, quote, "She was beautiful. She was so beautiful," unquote.
And she was.
Yeah.
By the time of Muhlaysia's funeral, the number of trans women murdered in 2019 had risen to 7. Again, all black trans women. And I believe we've talked about it on Extra. 4 days after her funeral, 26-year-old black trans woman Chenal Lindsay's body was found in White Rock Lake.
Chenal Lindsay was from Dallas and was known for her vibrant personality and love of fashion and doing hair. She was determined to live her truth and follow her dreams.
Dallas police began considering the possibility that Muhlaysia's and Chenal's murders could be connected, and also connected with a non-fatal knife attack earlier in April on a black trans woman in Dallas, and with several other murders of trans women in Dallas over the previous several years.
Police redoubled their efforts. Good. LGBTQ liaison Amber Roman met with Abounding Prosperity, Inc., an organization that had stepped in to help Muhlaysia after her April assault, and they contacted Dallas Voice, pleading for anyone with information to step forward.
On May 22, 2019, at about 9:30 p.m., police responded to the reports of a shooting at the Chatham Court Apartments on McCallum Boulevard. There they found Leticia Grant, a 35-year-old black woman, lying on the ground in the parking lot outside of the apartments, suffering from a gunshot wound to the head.
Wow.
She was transported to an area hospital for treatment.
Police said that Lyles had been in communication with Leticia shortly before her death, and that his cell phone pinged in the area where she was found. On May 24, 2019, Leticia died as a result of her injuries. Unfortunately, we could not find any information about Leticia Grant or her life before it was taken.
A little more than 24 hours after Leticia's shooting, 29-year-old Kenneth Sichaki was shot in the AutoZone parking lot just around the corner.
Kenneth was called Chad by his friends and family. He had a twin brother named James, and growing up, the two were inseparable. Chad earned his Associates of Applied Science in Drafting and Design Technology at ITT Tech, graduating with honors.
Described as kind-hearted, caring, and loving, he enjoyed working on crafts and learning new things. He also loved spending time with his niece Madison and hanging out with his twin.
A witness told detectives that on the night Chad was killed, she had been at a nearby laundromat when Lyles came in and started talking to her. They then got into her car and drove to the AutoZone.
After the witness parked, Lyles got out of the car to use the restroom. Moments later, Chad Sichaki leaned into the driver's side window and the witness, quote, almost immediately heard a gunshot, unquote. The witness, who later told police she didn't know why Chad had come up to the car, then drove away.
Facebook messages showed that Chad had been in communication with Lyles about the sale of Xanax. At 10:09 p.m., Chad sent a message saying that he was in the AutoZone parking lot. In 6 minutes later, he was found with a gunshot wound to his neck. Chad died 6 days later.
That's
Oh
nuts. I
my.
mean, these two
Yeah.
people were killed one after the other,
Yeah.
one day after the other, and
Yeah.
seemingly for no reason.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
That's illuminating though that it was over the sale of Xanax. So I guess
Xanax,
we
yeah.
didn't know anything about Lyle. But maybe he had a substance issue. I don't know. But
well, for sure, if he was looking for Xanax, he was looking for drugs. So
Right.
yeah, probably.
yeah. Let's get into the investigation and the arrest. Well, Lyles was later picked up in Collin County on some unrelated traffic violations. He was being held under a $1,000 bond on a warrant for driving without a valid driver's license and without insurance. When witnesses came forward and identified him as the person who murdered Leticia Grant.
This information was verified through phone records of communications between Leticia and Lyles at the time of her death. Lyles was then arrested in connection to the murders of Leticia Grant and Kenneth Chad Sachaki.
During the investigation into these murders, detectives realized that Lyles drove the same type of car, a light-colored Lincoln LS, believed to have picked up Muhlaysia Booker near the intersection of Spring and Legao the night she was killed.
A witness told investigators that Lyles frequented the area to meet up with transgender sex workers, and that Muhlaysia had gotten into a vehicle matching the description of Lyles about 3 hours before her body was found.
Investigators then began to analyze data from Lyles' cell phone. That analysis showed that Lyles often frequented the Spring Avenue Legao Street area, and that he was in that area at the time that Muhlaysia was picked up.
Investigators also found that Lyles and Muhlaysia's phones were traveling together around the time she was killed, and that he likely had her phone in his possession for a time after her murder.
So that's very serial killer behavior to have
Yes,
Susan
it
here.
is.
Yeah.
Look at that. On June 12th, Dallas police announced the arrest of Lyles, 34, for the murder of Muhlaysia Booker. Investigators said Lyles was also a person of interest in the murder of Chinal Lindsay, the black trans woman whose body was found in White Rock Lake on June 1st.
Investigators believed that Lyles was also possibly connected to the death of Armani Dante Morgan, a black trans woman whose July 2017 death was initially thought to be a suicide, but was then ruled unexplained. Her family has insisted that it was murder.
What? That's wild.
Yeah.
A man named Ruben Alvarado was eventually tried and convicted for Chinal's murder. Armani's death remains unsolved.
All right, it's trial time. So Lyles was charged with 3 counts of murder. In November of 2023, as jury selection was set to begin in his trial when Lyles, who was now 37, entered a guilty plea to the murder of Muhlaysia Booker.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I don't have Law and Order on here.
Yeah, there's your Law and Order
Dun, dun.
sound.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Family members and friends submitted victim impact statements. Jordan Ford, a close friend of Muhlaysia's, spoke about Muhlaysia's role as a mentor within the LGBTQ plus community and her commitment to raising awareness of the violence transgender people continue to face.
Jordan said that Muhlaysia, quote, refused to be silenced in adversity, unquote, and that she inspired many with her unwavering determination.
Lyles was sentenced to 48 years in prison. Muhlaysia's mother, Stephanie Houston, said, quote, no amount of time can bring Muhlaysia back. And although we wish the sentence was capital punishment, our family can finally have some sense of closure, knowing that justice was served and he can't cause any more families hurt or pain, unquote.
Lyles still faced charges for the murders of Leticia Grant and Kenneth Sachaki, but we could find no information about that, so I don't know if they are ever going to bring it to trial or if they brought it to trial. I couldn't find anything about
It
it.
might be one of those things that, he's already not getting out of jail, so they don't want to dedicate resources to that.
Oh,
just
good
stick
point.
it in their back pocket.
But still,
But if the fruities out there know.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the fruities out there know, let us know.
Yes.
Yeah, let us know. Get at us. So now let's get into where are they now? Tell us, Minnie.
Well, Lyles is currently incarcerated in Texas at the George Beto unit, a men's maximum security prison located in unincorporated Anderson County. He will be eligible for parole in 2044.
Muhlaysha's mom started the Muhlaysia Booker Foundation in her memory. Ahmad Gori, the president and board chair, said the circumstances leading up to Muhlaysha's murder, including the viral video of Muhlaysia being so violently assaulted, brought into reality for many people the violence and danger that Black transgender women face daily.
The video, Malaysia's brutal death, and the ever-rising toll of death and violence against trans women that followed in their wake, made this murder a national story when so many others have faded into the background.
All right, let's get into what we think made Lyles snap and our takeaways from this case.
So unfortunately, not knowing anything about Lyles's early life, we can only speculate about what might have made him snap.
Yeah, that's true.
It seemed like he often solicited trans sex workers.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
I mean, if he often solicited trans sex workers, then, he identified with them. And then when he identified with them, he didn't like that he identified with them.
Right.
And then
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Like
denial.
the traditional
It's-
serial killers who hate their moms and then
Yeah.
they kill, like Ted
Right.
Bundy
Yeah.
hated his
Yeah.
mom and killed a
Yeah.
bunch of women. And we've talked
in
about before how
effigy
it's,
or whatever.
right. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
killing the thing that
Mhm.
they hate inside of them.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Whoa.
so he was definitely conflicted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm not a medical professional.
No,
so what do
none
I
of
know?
us are. We're
Yeah.
just three cis, two straight, one queer ladies on a microphone.
What do we know?
Yeah.
Tell us
That'll be
what
our-
you know.
That'll be our next podcast.
Yeah.
We don't know anything.
Speaking of things I don't know, I don't know why our society is so unaccepting of anyone who's different.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
especially now in this political climate, it's really bad. And it's disgusting and sad.
Yes.
Yeah. It just feels like people should know better, right?
Yeah.
And we know that everybody's liberation is good for everybody, right? And I
Yes.
just
Yeah.
don't understand.
It just seems like bullheadedness to not accept it, Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I mean, I know
Yeah,
people...
I'm always amazed by people who reform themselves,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Or who can
Yeah.
change their views, or people who share their stories about, my child came out as trans, and at first I didn't know what to do or how to, react, but
And then they become like an ally and
an
somebody,
ally, an advocate,
an advocate.
a lover of a mother. I mean, just there is a way to get there.
Yes,
And just
yeah.
some people are so bullheaded that they just
Yeah.
refuse.
And it's I don't get it. But yeah, I was just gonna say I know people who just don't believe in psychology, and they don't.
Isn't it insane?
Yeah,
That's like not believing in space. You
Yeah.
can't
Or
not
like-
believe in space.
What else do they believe? The world is flat?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And all of the things that we've learned over the years, and like how toxic masculinity is bad for
Yeah.
everybody, and
Mhm.
that they just refuse to accept that. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, I don't know why he killed Leticia Grant and
Yeah,
Chad
specifically.
Sachaki. Yeah,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, those
but
people. Yeah.
It may have been that once he killed Muhlaysia, maybe it was nothing to kill other people,
Oh.
or maybe he
Yeah.
even got a kick out of it. I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was just gonna say that the issue of violence against trans people of color continues,
Yeah.
and I think there are many factors that could contribute to the violence that we talked about already. But if trans people are turned away from their birth families and they
Mhm.
have limited access to healthcare and employment and housing, and then they have to turn to survival work or sex work. And because society is rejecting them or they're not
Mhm.
safe, they have to go into this unsafe environment to
Right.
survive. And that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And transgender people of color's existence, it should not be a threat.
No, yeah.
Yeah. And it's really fucked up.
Vanessa.
Hi, Amy. And
Hi,
hi, True Crime fans.
We're the co-hosts of She Goes by Jane. Every week, we'll be covering the story of a missing or unidentified woman in the United States.
Stories you may have heard before.
And ones whose stories didn't make it into the news.
We've been covering these stories for a while, first in Amy's book of poetry, Doe.
And then in Vanessa's documentary, She.
But now we want to share them with you here on She Goes by Jane.
And each week we'll be joined by a special guest who will read a poem in honor of the women we talk about. Can we say who?
We can say who. We'll be joined by actresses like Coco Jones and Gabrielle Ruiz.
And musicians like Stephanie Quayle and Kelly Moneymaker, along with authors like Louise Penny
and Catherine McKenzie.
So check out She Goes by Jane wherever you get your podcasts, or check out Evergreen Podcasts and their true crime channel, Killer Podcasts.
We can't wait to bring you these stories.
Hi, I'm Matt Harris. Seton Tucker and I host the podcast Impact of Influence, which for 2 years covered in depth Alec Murdaugh, who was eventually convicted in 2023 of murdering his wife Maggie and son Paul. That story continues to evolve, and we will cover that. Plus, we will tell you stories of other true crime events that have happened in the South. Please join us on Impact of Influence. And give us a follow on the Impact of Influence Facebook page.
Minnie, any additional thoughts?
Yeah. Well, just what you were just saying kind of made me think about a few things. You know, it used to be long. So I've been watching this show lately called Harlots.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
Oh.
I hadn't watched it before, so it's new to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's essentially, you know, back in the 1700s, if a woman didn't follow the traditional path of getting married to whoever they were told to get married to at whatever age they were told to do it, basically, or, you know, if they were taken advantage of or even raped or something like that, is like once you're quote unquote spoiled, then their only way to survive, you know, they were kicked out. They were kicked out. They didn't have a place to live. And the only way that they could survive was on the street and doing sex work, you know. And it's kind of similar, you know, when you just to reject a person for not being traditional.
Yeah.
And it's like denying them a place to live and food because they are not traditional.
Yeah.
It's just, when you break it down to simple terms like that, it's just insanity, you know?
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. This one thing we've been talking about while Beth has been visiting is that there is an increasing problem with people not having access to housing, both here in Edmonton and down in Phoenix. And the populations of people who don't have access to housing are growing.
Yeah.
And part of that population, you know, people who do have housing and are living traditional lives often just kind of gloss it over with, oh, you know, it's their fault, you know, something they did, whatever, you know, and they don't want to accept that this is something that could happen to anyone, really, if they're rejected by society. And so a lot of the people, or if they, you know, even missing one payment of rent because the cost of housing right now is so insane.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's one disaster away from houselessness.
And then you've got to come up with first and last month's rent and security deposit, and at the rents that they are right now, like if you're working a minimum wage, how do you even do that? It's so there's, you know, just to the populations, and then people being kicked out of their houses because they're transgender. And it's just, I think I remember, I don't know, a few months ago I was talking about this book, My Ishmael, that I was reading. Essentially the idea is that, you know, food, water, shelter, these all should be basic human rights. You know, it shouldn't be the case that we can deny people food and shelter and water, you know,
and be okay with it.
Right. Yeah. Right. This should not be a part of society that we can, you know, lock up food and deny it to people. People should be able to just have food
and punish for trying to meet those needs.
Yes, exactly.
When you're lacking. Yeah.
So anyway, I rambled on for a while.
Oh my God. This discussion wins the discussion award. I loved this. Let us know what you guys think, listeners. And again, I just want to remind people that, we, if during this episode, if we've said anything that, is not cool or in line with
Respectful.
allyship and respect, let us know.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we don't want to cause harm.
We're trying our best to be
our
good
fruities.
allies. This is our desire, is to be good allies.
Yeah.
And if we've made some mistakes, we would love to hear about it so that we
and
can
we'll
fix
make
those
a
mistakes.
Help us be
correction.
better.
Yeah.
Yes, help us be better. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, y'all.
Because when you know better, you do better.
That's right.
Boop, boop, boop,
The more you know.
boop. Beth, where can the people find us?
Our website is fruitloopspod.com, and we use Fruit Loops Pod for all of our social media.
This is a weekly podcast, and new episodes drop every Thursday. So until next time, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there.
What if you could have a career where the opportunities are as vast as our nation, where it's not about mission statements, but a shared mission? At U.S. Customs and Border Protection, we go beyond to protect more than borders. From ship to shore, air to ground, cities to local communities, CBP agents and officers are keeping people safe. Join U.S. Customs and Border Protection and go beyond for something far greater than yourself. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.
Hey, podcast listeners, I'm Paul Brandis introducing my podcast, Countdown to Dallas. It's a fascinating, in-depth look at the seemingly unconnected events that led to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It's based on my book of the same title. In that book and in this podcast, I go all the way back to 1939, when Lee Harvey Oswald was born into a troubled and dysfunctional family. I'll follow his transient and often violent teenage years and young adulthood, painting a fuller picture of the man who would later become Kennedy's killer. I also take a look at events unfolding in that era, like Cuba and Vietnam, and I'll unpack the conspiracy theories too, not one of which has ever been conclusively proven. Subscribe to Countdown to Dallas at evergreenpodcasts.com or your favorite listening app, October 31st.